Thinking of traveling, whether it's domestically or internationally, anytime in the next year, there's a whole bunch of watch outs, need to know, and mistakes that other travelers are making that you need to avoid if you are thinking of traveling during this whole pandemic situation that we find ourselves in. I'm Gary Bembridge. This is Tips for Travellers. I want to talk about things you really need to know. Some of the things I'm going to discuss include should you be using a travel agent or self-booking, how your whole packing situation can change, the big mistakes that people are making that you need to avoid, and probably the single most important thing you need to think about, plan for, and know exactly what you're going to do when you're traveling in the current situation. The first key watch out is when you're thinking of traveling is assume that everything will change and change really quickly. So even if you can go to a certain country today or to a certain state today, that could change overnight. And we've seen lots of examples happen where it's perfectly fine to fly to a particular country like Spain, for example, out of the UK, but within hours, all of that could change. So countries are constantly evolving and looking at what they see as safe places to travel, whether you have to have quarantine, whether you go in, whether you have quarantine when you return home, and it changes really fast. I've had friends get on a plane heading off to Spain, for example. They've arrived, learned that the UK government was about to bring in quarantining at midnight. They've got on the plane and come back because they didn't want to go into 14-day quarantine. So when you think about traveling, assume that things can change really quickly, and it's really, really important that you stay on top of all the advice. You need to really stay well connected to the news. What I recommend you do is try and book as last minute as you possibly can. You also like to get really good deals nowadays by booking last minute. So you're booking when you know that the chances of everything going smoothly is pretty smooth. It's really hard now to book in advance because we just don't know what the situation is going to be. Secondly, though, if you book, even if you're booking way ahead, is ensure that everything is cancelable, refundable, or movable. So if things change, you can move things around without any penalties. The good news is a lot of providers, whether it's airlines or cruise lines or hotels, are making it much easier to move things. But absolutely critical, make sure that things are cancelable, refundable, and easy to move so you can basically go with the flow. The second big watch out is that if you do your own booking, which I used to like to do, I'd like to book my hotel separately, my flight separately, my accommodation separately, whatever it was separately. One of the things you might want to decide is don't do that and book it all through a travel agent. The reason being that if you have to change things, it becomes very complicated because it's 4 or 5 different contacts, calls to change things. If you've booked everything through a travel agent, it's one call, one email, and you can sit back and let them get on with everything. You don't have to sit on phone lines for 5 hours, 6 hours to try and get through to change flights. It takes an enormous amount of stress out and it makes things so much simpler. So even if you're a sort of person that normally likes to pick and mix and choose your own thing, I strongly recommend that you book through a travel agent. I've seen examples now. What I'm doing with all my travels over this period of time is using a travel agent to make it simple. The great news is also, particularly if you're abroad and you have connectivity issues or there's time difference issues, with that one call, that one email, you can basically relax, keep calm, and know that happens. It's been a great plus in the past when I'm traveling, when there's been lots of disruptions. I've been able to contact the agency at that time was Monday Cruising. I could then sit back, relax, go to the beach while everyone else was scurrying around, and I knew that they were sorting out all my problems. So seriously think about using a travel agent at this point of time. They can manage all of the changes, all of the refunds, and basically, very importantly, linked to my first point, is make sure that you know exactly the situation as it changes. They will keep on top of all those potential cancellations and changes in quarantine rules or whatever. The third watch out that I have, and this is a really, really important one as well, is don't assume that everything has returned to normal. I think one of the big mistakes that people are making is they assume that everything, particularly when it comes to travel, is back to normal. There are 3 critical things that you need to bear in mind. First of all, you need to absolutely check and make sure that everything is open. Just because lockdowns are ending, it doesn't just mean that everything is open. Some things may have even gone bankrupt or are just simply not opening because for whatever reason they are unable to. The government regulations in that country aren't letting them open. The beaches may not be open. You may have to book to go to the beaches. You might have to book a time slot at the pool. The attractions may not all be open. Or you might have to have certain restrictions before you can go in to see the sites of the museum that you wanted to see. The theme parks may not be entirely open, or only certain rides might be open. So there's a multitude of things you need to make sure that are open before you actually decide that is where you want to go, because you may not be able to do what you really want to do. Secondly, things may not run as you used to expect them to, or maybe very different. So for example, many islands in the Caribbean, some states in the US, some countries around the world require you to do a COVID-19 test within 72 hours of heading there, for example. Other countries, so for example, Greece, you have to register online 24 hours before you go. You get a special QR code which you have to show when you check in. So hundreds and thousands of people have missed their flights to Greece because they didn't understand that whole process, didn't get the QR codes, or didn't do the paperwork correctly. So you need to assume that things are going to run differently and it's going to be really different requirements. And the third thing, which is as important of all those, is the protocols and rules may not suit you. So for example, even today that I'm recording this, France introduced a whole bunch of new rules around Paris and other parts of the country where you had to start wearing masks outdoors. Some countries require you to wear them on the beach, whatever that may be. So you might find some of the protocols just don't suit you because you don't want to wear masks, or you don't like wearing masks, or you don't want to spend money to go on a vacation where you need to wear masks. There may be really different and complicated protocols. One of the most dramatic ones, we've seen that, for example, in cruising, where cruise lines are doing things like they've removed buffets, there's no self-service anymore, you have to book to go into certain venues, there's controls on how many people can be around the pool. In some countries around the world, for example, Spain, you have to book a specific time and spot on the beach before you can go. So you might actually find that the rules and regulations, the protocols, don't really appeal to you. So you might be heading off on a vacation thinking it's how it used to be, but the way it works is different. You need to be absolutely sure that those protocols and the way it works, you understand and suit the way that you want to travel. Another key watch out is around travel insurance, or what it does and doesn't cover. If you travel against the advice of your country, so if your Foreign Office or your State Department has recommended not traveling to a country and you travel there, your travel insurance will be invalidated. There are some places where you can take out specific insurance for that, but it's fairly limited and quite expensive. Very importantly, I also recommend when you look at travel insurance, first of all, make sure that it gives you COVID-19 cover. So if anything happens related to COVID-19, you're covered. Also make sure that you take out travel insurance when you book, so that it includes cancel for any reasons. That's very important that you make sure you have in there that you can cancel for any reason. But also make sure you take out travel insurance which covers longer than your initial period. So if you were due to end your holiday on a certain date, but something happens and you find you're quarantined in a country, or you're stranded in a country for whatever reason, or you can't move out of a country, that your travel insurance is covering you and all of those things that are happening after your travel. Really important, don't travel without travel insurance, because the on costs with everything that's going on could be very, very large. The other aspect with travel insurance is with lots of bankruptcies and companies closing down, having travel insurance should hopefully cover you if your car hire, your hotel, or the resort you're planning to go to goes bust and you can't go there. So really, really important, when everything's so unsettled, make sure you travel with travel insurance and you know what it covers. Another key watch out that I have, and this is something that a lot of people encountered when they got caught up in the original lockdowns at the beginning, is make sure that you have a good, secure way to communicate with trusted people. The most important thing is to make sure that you have a roaming plan for your mobile phone. So wherever you're going to, you're able to check online with data, the latest news, the latest advice, but importantly, you're able to communicate with your agent, with your family, with your friends, or whoever you need to do. Really important that you have that cover, because you can't necessarily rely on Wi-Fi where you are. Also, what I would recommend is focus on trusted sources. So a lot of people look at a lot of social media. There's lots of misinformation. So when you are abroad, when you're traveling, make sure that you're focusing on key news sites, government sites, so the latest information you're getting is genuine information, not all the kind of hype that comes through social media. The next key watch out is around packing, and making sure that you're packing not just for your vacation, but on the assumption that things could go wrong. You might get caught up in quarantining, you might find that you have to self-isolate for whatever reason, or you find things get cancelled, or you're kind of stuck in a place. So make sure that when you pack, you think about, what if I'm away for an extended period of time? There's some really obvious things that you should do. So if you take prescription medicines, make sure that you're covering yourself for many, many weeks ahead, or perhaps even take a copy of your prescription so you know, or you can work with doctors there with what you need. Also, I recommend you take some kind of first aid kit where you pack all the sort of things that deal with daily upsets, whether it's stomach upsets, toothache, headaches, upset stomachs, whatever it is that you normally may suffer from at home. Make sure that you take a first aid kit, so if you have any bumps or scrapes, you can deal with that. Critically important, take with you a dental repair kit. One of the things that happened when people were away, and it happened during the lockdown, is dental practices were closed in many countries. So if you broke a tooth or a filling fell out, you basically had to wait and couldn't get any dental care. So having a dental repair kit, really, really important. It actually happened to me during lockdown where a tooth broke and I couldn't see a dentist for months, and I was really reliant on a dental kit even at home. But certainly when you're abroad traveling, make sure you've got one of those. Again, make sure you've packed lots of masks, lots of hand sanitizer, disinfecting wipes, and also pack entertainment. So if you've got a tablet or whatever, pack it full of books or shows downloaded. So if you do find that your holiday is extended or you're waiting around, you're kind of well prepared for that situation. For me, one of the biggest watch outs and probably the most important issue of all is understand what will happen and what you will do if, when you're away traveling, you start getting symptoms of coronavirus and you find that you're then forced into some sort of lockdown. So understand, for example, if you're traveling into a country that requires COVID-19 tests or a state that requires a COVID-19 test, what actually happens if you fail that test? Will you have to pay for your own isolation, your own medical fees? If you're flying into or going to a country that requires quarantining, what sort of quarantining is it? So for example, if you go into Australia, there are limits on who can go in, but still you have to pay for your own quarantining in a government facility, which is a hotel. Other countries you self-isolate. If you're going on a cruise and you fail the COVID-19 test or fail the health screening, what happens? Who pays for what? What do you have to do? So really, really important to understand what happens if you get symptoms or you feel ill when you're away, so you understand what your plan is going to be and you're prepared for that. If you're planning to travel, whether it's domestically within your own country, between states, or internationally, travel has got much more complicated. There's lots of mistakes people are making, lots of watch outs and need to knows before you plan. Hopefully this has helped you, give you a sense of the most important things that I think that you should be focusing on, certainly what I've been focusing on as I go out traveling. I have loads more travel videos and cruising videos, tips and advice. So why don't you watch another one of those right now?